Evening chanting in Pali on page 18.
Buddhasa samigaso wa Buddho me
Annamayang Dhammanusatinayang Karomase Sovakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Opanayiko Pachatam Vedita Ovinyuki Annamayang Dhamma Vigitin Karomase Sovakata Dadiguna Yoga Vasena Seyo Yomaga Paga Pariyati Vimoga Vedo Dhammo Kuloka Padana Tatadari Dari Vandamaham Tamaharam Varadam Amekam Dhammo Yosapapaninam Saranam Kemamuttamam Dutiyanu Satitanam Vandamidam Sirenaham Dhammasa Samidaso Vadammo Me Samiki Saro Dhammo Dukkha Sagata Cahidata Cahita Same Dhammasa Niyade Misariram Chirikan Chidam Vandam Toham Charisami Dhamma Seva Sudamatam Nati Me Saranam Nanyam Kammo Me Saranam Varam Ekena Satchavajena Vadeyam Sadhu Sasane Dhammam Me Vandamanenayam Punyam Vasudhamida Sabediyam Naraya Me Mahesum Prasate Annamayam Sanghanusatinayam Karomase Supatinano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Ujjhagatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Nyayapatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Samicipatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Yadidam Chattari Purisa Yugani Yatta Purisa Pūgala Esa Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Ahuneyo Bahuneyo Dakineyo Anjali Karaniyo Madhukaram Punyaketam Lokasati Annamayam Sangha Vigitin Karomase Sadamajo Supatipati Guna Viyuto Yoga Vido Variya Pūgala Samgaseto Sila Digama Pavara Sayakaya Chito Vandamaham Tamariyana Ganam Susudam Sanggoyo Sapapaninam Saranam Kemamuttamam Tatiyanu Satinanam Vandamidam Sirenaham Sanghasa Samidaso Vasangho Me Samaniki Saro Sangho Dukkha Sagata Tavidata tahita same Sangasaham hiyade misariran jivitan chidam Vandantoham charisami sangaso patipanatam Nati me saranam gamyam sango me saranam varam Etena
we can take a short break and come back for the precepts and the talk.
Tisaranena saha Ata silani yachama Tatiyampi mayam bhante Tisaranena saha Ata silani yachama.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Bhutang saranang gacchami.
Bhutang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi Bhutang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi Bhutang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi Bhutang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi Bhutang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tisaranakammanang nititang. Panatipada veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Panatipata veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature.
Adina dana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given. Abrahmacharya veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from any intentional sexual activity. Musawada veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from lying. Sura meraya maja pamadatana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Sura mera maja pamadatana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness.
I undertake the precept to refrain from intoxicating drugs which lead to carelessness.
Vikala bhojana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Vikala bhojana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from eating at inappropriate times.
I undertake the precept to refrain from eating at inappropriate times.
Nacha gita varita visukadasana malaganda vilepana dharana mandana vibhusanatana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Nacha gita varita visukadasana malaganda vilepana dharana mandana vibhusanatana.
I undertake the precept to refrain from entertainment, beautification, and adornment.
I undertake the precept to refrain from entertainment, beautification, and adornment.
Ucha sayana mahasayana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Ucha sayana mahasayana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from lying on a high or luxurious sleeping place.
I undertake the precept to refrain from lying on a high or luxurious sleeping place.
Imani atta sikapadani samadhiyami.
Imani atta sikapadani samadhiyami. Imani atta sikapadani samadhiyami. Imani atta sikapadani samadhiyami.
Silena sugatin yanti, silena boga sampada, silena nibutin yanti tasama, silang visota ye.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. December 19th, 2025 is our new moon Uposita, the Lunar Observance Day. And there's a guest here recently, old-time friend, Dhamma teacher, And she mentioned that coming to Abhayagiri was like a balm for the heart. I quite like that, a balm for the heart. And it's like the thinking of the Buddha, the way the Buddha would train people or encourage people, is not browbeating people, but actually just the image the Buddha himself gives of the mother cow leading the young cow across the river. So sometimes the river might be a little bit too deep, so the baby cow can't really cross on its own. The mother cow needs to prod it and kind of push it across. So that's like the Buddha is encouraging us and not really being heavy-handed with us. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to perhaps lose the plot at various times. So, but then the metta of the Buddha is something that became apparent to me, I think, on the India pilgrimage we were just on recently, the Abhayagiri India pilgrimage, and the metta of the Buddha. So I think, for myself, like early on, it was kind of more fear-based, thinking, okay, like the Buddha's like a policing my behavior. But actually, the Buddha has much metta and compassion, and is compassionately teaching us in order to see us develop ourselves. And it's not about our behavior being policed, or that we need to act in a fear-based way around teachers and so on. But it's to be expected, growing up in this particular society, that we might be afraid of being judged. And something you'll hear people say sometimes is, oh, I like that person because they don't judge me. So that's partly the result of growing up in a Judeo-Christian society, because God passes judgment. So, and then that has a trickle-down effect in the society, like you go to court and the judge judges whether you're going to go to prison, or even Santa Claus. Even Santa Claus is judging you as whether you're good or bad. It's like this song, he knows if you've been naughty or nice. And so even Santa Claus is judging you. So so it's that's why I felt so at home in Thailand. It's a different culture. It's a Buddhist culture, and it's more about encouraging each other and not necessarily about judging each other. Although even in Thailand, the people still do develop fixed negative perceptions of one another. That seems to be the world over. But I think in our society in particular, there's this idea of judging, fear of judgment, judging others, being judged. It's just happening all around us. So to deconstruct that and calm that, then we have a place like Abhayagiri, a balm for the heart. And the heart gets wounded, traumatized from all this judgment. It's particularly like Ajahn translation for metta is non-judgmental awareness. So I think for myself how often my mind would be judging, interpreting, you have the peanut gallery in the mind, just kind of always commentating, and this person's like this, that person's like that. And then that's a real burden. So we have this period at the end of the year, coming up to winter retreat time, very special time at Abhayagiri. And when there's a lot of space, a lot of time for practice, it's easy to drift, so it's good to have some sort of anchor for ourselves. It's good for the monastic community here to pick up maybe some sort of study. I remember when I was a novice, it was just the winter retreat, really open period, and there's no tea time Q&A, for example, so it'd kind of be having tea and then just be quiet, kind of waiting for evening puja. I remember I picked up Patipada, the way of practice of Ajahn Mun, and was reading through that then at the tea time. So just kind of get some tea, go and sit in a solitary area, or in the cloister area somewhere, and read Patipada. And then I found that really helped my mind it was a good way to use that empty period of the tea time. I found I wasn't able to do sitting and walking meditation all the time. So when there's these big empty periods, then it is good to have some sort of study and something that we're engaging the mind, or else it can drift. It can drift very easily. And if we're able to structure our time in a way that's beneficial and keep the mind from drifting too far, then we'll end up having a very efficacious time during the winter retreat, during the period of when there's a lot of space, a lot of quiet, a lot of time for practice. But if we're not careful, then all of that time, then our mental defilements can make use of it if we're not careful and look for ways to distract ourselves and so on. And we do have a lot of things that we allow for a bit of a range, and the mind can wander within certain boundaries. We give the mind a big pasture to roam in. If it's too hemmed in, then it'll just rebel. So we give it something to think about, something to chew on. That's important. Part of it too is then learning how to be okay with silence and stillness, and not having to fill up the time and not having to fill the silence. That's important to be able to do, an important skill to develop. And then if we have solitude periods, then solitude is very much an acquired taste. And it can be delightful to spend time on our own. Or it can be difficult. I found one of the things that when I first had the opportunity to engage in retreat period on my own at Abhayagiri, as an anagarika, as a novice, as a junior monk, then one of the things I found interesting was how much of my behavior was due to what I perceived as the expectations of others, or how I would just choose to behave based on being around other people. But then those mental formations would come up in solitude, and I don't need to do that, there's nobody around. So starting to look at why we act the way we act, and how much of our actions are just based on being around other people and who we're around. And so we might act one way around one person, act another way around another person. We might act one way around people we like, act another way around people we dislike. it's all so empty and meaningless. We give a lot of meaning to this. This is the world. So what makes the world turn is these kinds of things, but then we can gain insight into this when we have solitude. We have time to consider these things, look at the perceptions. This is part of Citta Anupassana. And then looking and just seeing that this is perception as perception. This is an aggregate. This is one of the khandhas. Learning how to question our perceptions, keeping in mind the Buddha's teaching, this mind-opening teaching of the Buddha. Whatever the mind conceives, it is ever other than that. This never quite hits the mark. It's just the nature of conditioned reality, so it never really fully gets to the unconditioned. It's like Lumpur Sumedho would teach that can a sankhara know another sankhara? So it's always time-based. The thinking mind is always time-based. Thoughts have an arising, a middle, and an end. They have a rising, a sustenance, and an end. And so whatever thoughts we have, the way they're actually being generated is very interesting and almost scary. It's like the conjurer in the background, the magician's trick. So this is whatever mental proliferations we have to start to see what is happening in the background, where are they coming from, how are they being generated. And this is where we get into where the Buddha talking about the root defilements. So a lot of these things, the heart has a certain impulse, a certain energy. And there's some suttas where you'll see in the Samyutta Nikaya these series of short suttas, and there's one thing that causes suffering, and that one thing is dosa, anger, hatred. Then the next sutta, there's one thing that causes suffering that needs to be relinquished. And then it'll be a different word, raga, lust. And then the next sutta would be, there's one thing, monks, that needs to be relinquished that causes suffering, moha, delusion. So how can there be one thing, and they're different words? So the way I see this is that the Buddha's looking at energy and trying to put it into words. So looking at a certain energy, well, I guess looking at one angle, that's lust. Looking at another angle, that's anger. Looking at another angle, well, it's delusion. So we look at these things from different angles. And so there's that impulse. That's pointing to an energy. That's pointing to an energy in the heart. And then the mind, say, picks it up, and there might be a perception around it or a proliferation. The proliferation might take the form of justifying it in some way, or developing some sort of logic around it as to why things need to be that way. So it's so interesting to think about this, to contemplate it. We can also think in terms of the Four Noble Truths. There is suffering, so there's suffering that arises. It's very basic, very primary. Suffering arises. There is a cause of suffering, and the cause of suffering is listed as three, as kama tanha, the craving for sensuality, bhava tanha, the craving for becoming, and vibhava tanha, the craving for non-becoming. So this is another way to look at it. these impulses that come out of the heart, then that are causing us suffering. And we think, okay, there is suffering, and there is a cause of suffering. So the heart doesn't really believe that the cause of suffering is kama-tanha, bhava-tanha, vibhava-tanha. It doesn't believe it. If it believed it, if the heart really believed it, it would let go immediately. It wouldn't be able to hold on. So why can't we let go? Why do we keep holding on? It's because maybe intellectually we see this, we know the Four Noble Truths. It's a very easy teaching, very basic teaching, very simple teaching, easy to memorize, easy to think about. But the heart doesn't yet believe it. Deep down inside, we don't believe it. So what do we really believe? So there is suffering. The cause of my suffering is this person did this to me. That's the cause of my suffering. The cause of suffering is this political situation. The cause of suffering is this sickness. The cause of suffering is if that person didn't live here, then I wouldn't suffer. The cause of suffering is the way that person looked at me. The cause of suffering is the weather or anything. That's what we really believe. That's why we're still suffering. Because that's what we really believe, that's why we're still suffering. That's why we haven't not gotten to the root of the matter. If the heart, on a very deep level, really believed that kama-tanha, bhava-tanha, vibhava-tanha is the cause of suffering, it will be able to let go. It actually, not that it will be able to let go, it won't be able to not let go. It won't be able to hold on anymore. It can't hold on if it really sees it. But because we don't yet have enough mindfulness to see that, oh, I think this is the cause of suffering, I think that's the cause of suffering, all these things outside, without realizing it, we disempower ourselves. So I love this word empowerment that the Tibetans use, empowerment. So if our suffering is coming from outside, then we're absolutely disempowered. We can't do anything about it. But if we see that it's something we're generating, then we can do something about it. That empowers us. So that's an empowerment. The real empowerment is when we see that this is something that's happening in the heart. The defilements are in the heart. Liberation is in the heart. It's all inside. And I'm empowered to do something about it. I can take charge of my own heart. And nobody else can take charge of it for me. So that's the intention of the Buddha. That's the practitioner, the one who is going to take charge of their own heart. That's the intention of really coming to the monastery. And when we take charge of our own heart, then we can apply balm to the heart. Then we can apply the medicine. The medicine is Noble Eightfold Path, leading to the ending of suffering. So I can take charge of my heart. I can engage in right speech. I can engage in right action. I can engage in right effort and right mindfulness. So right effort is seeing, very honestly looking, okay, did this intention lead to suffering or not? What was the result? Was this action of mine wholesome or unwholesome? When I engaged in that, what was the result? Or if I acted on a thought of irritation or anger, or spoke on a thought of irritation or anger as the root, what was the result like? Before I speak or act, what's behind it? Is my speech or action going to be beneficial or unbeneficial? While I'm speaking or acting, is that speech and action beneficial or unbeneficial? Having spoken or acted, was that speech or that action I just engaged in beneficial or unbeneficial? What was the result, and how can I modify my behavior to be more wholesome and less unwholesome? That's the Rahula Vada Sutta, that the Buddha teaching his biological son, Rahula, in that way, that in saying that any ascetics or Brahmins that have been in the past, or that exist now, or that will come about in the future, all of them will purify their minds in this way, just by reflecting on their own behavior in this way, becoming very reflective in terms of actions by body or speech one is going to engage in, one is engaging in, and one has engaged in, reflecting on the potential results, the results in the here and now, and the past results. That this is the way to purify the mind. And it's very basic, but then it takes a lot of focus, a lot of mindfulness to be able to do this. The other part of this is then when we do suffer, or we see that we've caused suffering, then to be able to be very forgiving with ourselves as well. And then speaking like this, if we say the suffering is being generated inside, how can we say we cause the suffering for somebody else? Of course, their suffering is also generated from the inside. Yes, on an ultimate level, that is the case. However, if we're practicing, then the noble approach is to say, okay, I'm going to acknowledge and see that the suffering that I'm experiencing is from my own internal process, my own internal defilements. And I'm going to be as kind as possible to others. I'm going to be as generous as possible to others, as forgiving as possible toward others, as non-judgmental as possible toward others. Because not everyone is there yet. Not everyone is able to reflect on their behavior. Not everyone is practicing. So to not expect that everyone's going to see that the suffering is coming from inside for themselves. So that's the noble approach. Take responsibility for ourselves and be as kind as possible to others. And that is wholesome, that is helpful. The intentions of kindness and compassion. And the Buddha never says, there's not a single place in the suttas where the Buddha says, get angry. It is, get angry. That's the right thing to do in that situation. It's never the right thing to do according to the Buddha. It's never wholesome, never skillful. Anger, when the Buddha talks about anger, he says, anger makes one ugly. He says, even if someone is externally beautiful, when they're angry, they become ugly. He also says, anger is a hindrance. It's one of the nivaranas. It's the second of the 5 hindrances. And what does it do? What's the result? It weakens wisdom. So when you get angry, you're ugly and stupid. Yeah. And that's just the result of anger. That's the natural result of anger. So it's in our best interest to relinquish it. If we can't relinquish it, to not act on it. To reflect on it, where is it coming from? It's because that person said that to... No, it's not that. There's an energy. There's an energy in the heart that we need to look at. And sometimes the anger has a wholesome veneer. So again, I could quote Longpa Sumedho in terms of, what are we angry at? We're angry at somebody else's anger. We don't want somebody else to be angry, so we get upset that somebody else is angry. And so that has a wholesome veneer because we want anger to end. We want somebody else's anger to end. But then the part we're not seeing is that we're giving rise to the same exact energy. Santa Claus isn't going to like that. he's like, nope, he hasn't been good. Not getting any presents. So we get angry, then we're ugly, stupid, and poor as well. Or we have greed, covetousness. There's this word in Pali, abhija, means covetousness. It's said that and that's one of the 10 non-virtues. It's one of the 3 mental non-virtues. The mental non-virtues are ill will, covetousness, and wrong view. These are the 3 mental non-virtues. And it's said that when we go about coveting the things of others or have that unhealthy sense of wanting, we don't attain our goals. So that's a type of suffering that's a little bit harder to see. So myself, as a greed type, this one's familiar to me. It's like, oh, yeah, I want this, I want that. Oh yeah, it'd be nice to have this, be nice to have that, be nice to have this type of food, be nice to have this type of cloth for robes, be nice to get this type of alms food offered to me. It'd be nice to have this type of dwelling place. It'd be nice to have all sorts of things. So that's the mind latching on with clinging. And then that suffering is a little bit harder to see, because then when we do get those things, there might be a little bit of a charge that we get. There's a little bit of a gratification there. And the drawback, though, is that it's never satisfied. So the gratification, seeing the gratification as gratification, it really is gratifying. Seeing the drawback as drawback, the gratification only lasts for a very short period of time. The charge lasts for a short period of time, and then once that charge is gone, then we just have to go on to the next thing, seeking something else. It's never ending. The escape as the escape, that's the heart seeing it, the heart seeing the suffering without a doubt, and the relinquishment. Being able to relinquish that very craving. So that's so important, to be able to act in a way where we reflect on our own behavior and see that it's coming from inside. And it kind of, talking like this reminds me of the story of Lumpur Cha taking Lumpur Sumedho to see Lumpur Khao, a senior disciple of Tanajan Mun. And then he didn't say very much because he was very ill. This Lumpur Khao, he was very, very seriously ill near the end of his life. And you see pictures of him at that time. His face was all sunken in, and his jaw was really protruding, and it just looked really quite painful. And so he wasn't saying very much. But then as they paid respects, and as they were leaving, he kind of was like, hey, and kind of caused Ajahn Sumedho to turn around and is pointing to his heart. It's all here. It's not anywhere else. It's all here. And that's a very profound teaching. It's not somewhere outside. So it's good to be reminded of that. It's good to come back to that. And we will gain a lot of benefit if we see that the suffering arises from inside. There's these energies in the heart. And then to reflect on that's where the mental formations are coming from. And to start to see the benefit of wholesome states and the drawback of unwholesome states. Especially when we have all this time to practice, all this support. We have full support here to practice. And then to be very, very forgiving, and just if something disagreeable is happening, it doesn't matter. Just come back to this. Just be able to say, it's not a big deal. If people are keeping the precepts and are harmonious enough, a big community, it's in our best interest to be very, very forgiving. Being able to say, it's not a big deal. Okay, if that person's acting like that, that's going to be suffering for them if it's coming from that intention. It's not my job to be upset, be angry. It's my job to just reflect on my own behavior. And Lunar Pūjā would say, as practitioners, we look inward 90%, look outward 10%. So these are just a few reflections coming up in this quiet Lunar Observance Day evening at Abhayagiri, and I hope everyone can take them and use them to be of benefit, and may everybody be well, happy, and peaceful. I'll leave it at that. This evening, if people would like to keep sitting or practicing, it's the Lunar Observance Day, you're welcome to do that. But it is optional, so we can also have the truck come up and go up for a rest if we'd like to do that. Tomorrow is Saturday, so it won't be a completely open day. It'll be open morning, no work period or anything, but day after Wanpra schedule, but then we'll have the Saturday evening Pūjā and Dhamma talk. And then Sunday will be no morning or evening Pūjā, but there will be a work period. So we'll close with a chant on page 33, the verse of sharing an aspiration. Now let us chant the verses of sharing aspiration. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, may my spiritual teachers and guides of great virtue, my mother, my father, and my relatives, the sun and the moon, and all virtuous leaders of the world, may the highest gods and evil forces, celestial beings, guardian spirits of the earth, and the Lord of death, may those who are friendly, indifferent, or hostile, may all beings receive the blessings of my life, may they soon attain the threefold bliss, and realize the deathless, through the goodness that arises from my practice, and through this act of sharing, may all desires and attachments quickly cease, and all harmful states of mind, until I realize Nibbana in every kind of birth. May I have an upright mind, with mindfulness and wisdom, austerity and vigor. May the forces of delusion not take hold, nor weaken my resolve. The Buddha is my excellent refuge. Unsurpassed is the protection of the Dhamma. The solitary Buddha is my noble guide. The Sangha is my supreme support. Through the supreme power of all these, may darkness and delusion be dispelled. Supatipanno Bhagavata